I'm here with another deep analysis video for you for the topic data sufficiency. So by the end of this video, you will be able to understand why you are suffering with the problems you are for the topic data sufficiency and how you can overcome those issues, right? Now, the primary purpose for me to make this video is because I have observed that in the past few mocks, regularly when we have been discussing the solutions, I could sense that in your tier 2 mocks or even other mocks, wherever I'm coming across questions from data sufficiency, students are suffering because they are consuming a lot of time to solve a simple question of data sufficiency. So that probably can be very alarming, because data sufficiency is one of the most important questions from the reasoning section, and it is very easy for you to ace it. So let's start right away by understanding what exactly is data sufficiency. And when I say data sufficiency, there is a primary confusion in a lot of students. But before we come to that, to understand data sufficiency, it is like a bridge between critical reasoning and your regular logical or analytical reasoning. For any question, let's say blood relation, syllogism, or coding, decoding, or arrangement, sitting arrangement, order-based question, ranking, comparison, any of these questions in logical reasoning is, a question is given to you, you solve it, you get the answers. Any of these topics can be converted into data sufficiency. So data sufficiency is just a method of asking a question. That's all. The background is nothing. There is no background. There is no concept involved. Concept can be picked up from anything. So much so that this can also be clubbed with topics from quantitative aptitude, from general knowledge, from English language, anywhere. So this is like a community section where all the topics are coming together from any subject for your preparation. So you need to be aware about this topic very nicely, because this topic has a tendency to put you off tracks in your examinations. Even one question can actually make or break. It can actually make a big difference. So how to approach this question? Only one thing in your mind: whether the data given is sufficient to answer the question or not. That's all we need from you, nothing more. Please resist and refrain from actually solving the whole question. It is settled in your subconscious that when you see some codes given to you, you will end up wanting to. There will be a dire need inside you to actually find out the final logic or to crack the code. But that is not what we need. Okay. A question might give you something about blood relations. So again, you will have a compulsive need to actually find the final relation. Or to finally, it's a sitting arrangement question, so you would actually want to arrange the whole sit. But avoid doing that. The moment you understand whether you can find the answer or not with the given data, that's all we need. Tick mark, move ahead. Please refrain from solving the whole thing. That's the primary problem which a lot of students face. And so what are the characteristics? What are the important points? It tests your sufficiency. It's an integration point, like I told you, for multiple subjects can be clubbed together here. For logical reasoning, we have topics like blood relation, puzzles, ranking concepts. And for quant, we can have algebra, geometry, time and work, anything. Okay, so that's the main purpose of this topic, that it will test your sufficiency skills. So it's a good bridge of a gap between your critical reasoning concepts, where you're actually finding conclusions, inferences, you're deducing everything, you're analyzing the statements in depth, and your regular analytical reasoning. Right now, if you look at the trend analysis for the last few years, this data is for 5 years actually, but I have only numbered it generally. I have only generalized the data. This is not accurate data, not absolute numbered data, but this says that in tier 1 also, and I have been always maintaining that it is not always expected in each shift that there will be a question from data sufficiency, but sometimes you can expect in one of the shifts you will find one question, not more than that. One question, and it will always be restricted to simple topics like order based or ranking based, arrangement based, simple data sufficiency based questions. But as soon as you switch to tier 2, the frequency increases, and it increases a lot. Up to 3 questions are expected from data sufficiency, and it can vary from any domain, from logical reasoning, from quantitative aptitude, from general knowledge, from English language, anything. So data sufficiency can be used to pose a question from any of these topics in tier 2, and it becomes very important because at least 3 questions are expected. So that holds a lot of value, a lot of importance. And what happens is, you can score quickly in these questions. It's not very difficult, but you end up consuming a lot of time because you don't know how to shorten the gap. Right? Now I'll show you what are the primary problems students face in these concepts. But before that, we need to understand, as I already told you, why to study data sufficiency in the first place. So it will help to test your conceptual clarity, in the sense that because it is a multifold concept, it is a multifold attempt wherein you have multiple subjects clubbed together. So you need to be conceptually very strong to be able to understand whether you will be able to find the answer or not. You don't have to actually go through the process, right? Gatekeeper for tier 2 implies that for tier 2 it has a lot of questions. Frequency is very high. You are expecting up to 2 to 3 to 4 questions also in some cases. So in that case, this becomes a primary topic of importance, right? So this is very important, hence we are calling it a gatekeeper for tier 2. Cross-disciplinary skill I have already told you, and it improves your analytical thinking. So it is a good, everything has already been discussed with you. It bridges the gap between your analytical and conceptual or critical reasoning. Now, what are the traps? What are the issues which you are facing, right? Why is it time consuming? The primary first point is the no need to solve paradox, the no need to solve complex. What exactly happens is, time and again, anybody who's teaching data sufficiency to you on any platform is going to tell you the same thing: please refrain from solving the whole thing. But we don't train our brains that way, and the issue is that you have a carnal habit of actually solving the question when you see the data in front of you. But that is what this is all about. That is what it is testing. So you need to learn to refrain, to learn to hold, to learn to have restraint, right? Then double analysis, triple time. So what happens is, you need to check sometimes statement 1, then statement 2, then both of them. So because of that approach, see, you have already checked for statement 1. Okay, now you did not get the answer. So now you checked for statement 2. Again, you did not get the answer. So now you will have to check for 1 and 2, right? This is time consuming. So sometimes if you have questions where you have to check multiple cases, it is going to consume time that ways. Investing that time is okay, but this can also be brought down if you approach it with option sorting. Always what you need to do is, whenever you have a data sufficiency based question, you have a question given, you have data in the form of statements given, do not read the statements beforehand. You read the question, then you straight away read the options, so that you know what all tests you need to take. Sometimes it does not want you to check 1 alone. It does not want you to check 2 alone. It straight away wants you to check 1 and 2 together, 2 and 3 together, 1 and 3 together, or none together, or all of them together, right? So understand your approach clearly, and for each question it is going to change, and you'll be able to understand it from your options alone. So be careful about that, right? Incomplete conceptual knowledge, again, as I've told you, if that is a prerequisite of data sufficiency, if you are not conceptually strong, you will not be able to capture the fact that whether the question can be solved with given data or not. How much minimum data is sufficient to solve the question? The C trap and assumptions. Now this is a very common problem a lot of students face. When you actually start solving the data sufficiency question, you read statement 1, you apply the concept, okay, you apply the data, and you try to see, you will not be able to solve it. Now you go to statement 2, but the problem is your memory still has data from statement 1 which you are unable to let go, and you unknowingly, you subconsciously take that into consideration, and eventually you find out the answer for both required, but you actually probably did not need data from 1. So that is a bias actually. That is a bias because of memory, and it also works in the opposite direction, where you tend to not focus on individual statements, but you are always going to focus on the combined answers. So a majority of the times the C trap involves option C. Option C is usually both 1 and 2 follow. Both 1 and 2 are required or sufficient to answer the question. So that is why they call it the C trap. So it is very common for you to think that, okay, I think both will answer the question, right? So you need to understand that is not always true. It's just an assumption which you need to be aware of. And confusing yes, no versus value. Data sufficiency will be always of 2 types. One type of question will always have a value. If it's a quant based question, even if it's a reasoning based question, there's a final answer. You don't need to find the answer. You just need to check whether with all the data given to you, you'll be able to find the value or not. For yes, no, you have to deduce and read a lot of statements. You'll have to go through everything, and you'll have to then channelize the inner understanding understanding and gauge whether the final answer will be yes or no. That is much more time consuming than a regular value based question where you can simply analyze and observe just by putting in some partial formulae that whether you'll be able to get the final answer or not. So that is a different criteria or aspect altogether. Now the problem is, how do we overcome these issues? How do we overcome these problems? So the first thing is the base topics. So your core needs to be clear. You need to be thorough with the basics, the normal method, the short tricks, and the data required to solve these questions. How much data is actually required? And you need to be minimum handed in these questions. Minimum handed means you are attempting one, you are applying the data from statement 1. You need to only think of that. The moment you switch to data 2, forget everything about data 1. Refresh, restart. So probably, initially when you're practicing, start attempting it in a different zone altogether, in a different sheet, in a different side of your paper, so that you don't link the two of them. That if it is not visible to you, you will not be able to recall it. Learn the flow chart. This is not applicable for you as much because for you it is going to change as per the options. So for you, I would say don't stick to a flow chart. Always stick to the options. The options are going to decide the course of your action. The flow chart here says you need to attempt check for step 1, forget, check for step 2, forget, check for both of them together. So that's the flow chart they want you to know, so that there's no confusion in between. Then practice the stop rule. Again, now that time and again we have established the fact that the biggest problem here is whether you need to solve the whole thing or not. So the stop rule just says that the moment you can establish the fact that the given data is sufficient, you stop solving after that. No matter what it is, no matter where it is, no matter what kind of question it is, you will stop it right there. You will tick and move ahead. Okay. Also, options help you out a lot. For example, tomorrow also when I'll have an in-depth session with you where we will be discussing or practicing these questions from this topic, I will also show you live that sometimes options help you out a lot. Okay. So you have an option known as either 1 or 2. So you will check for 1, and if it is not right, either will automatically be cancelled out, because for either 1 or 2 to be true, 1 and 2 individually also have to be true. So these things will help you out to cross out more and more, to eliminate more and more options, and to actually identify the correct option much sooner, right? So the stop rule, focus on boundary cases. Again, boundary cases means yes no questions. So you will have to completely check the whole data and then come to a conclusion. In these cases you can test for extreme values. Extreme values means, for example, it's a formula based question, it's an algebra based question, and you need to substitute something to check. So always substitute extreme values so that all the statements are covered in your conclusions, right? So that is what it is saying. And treat statements as independent. This I have already told you, to avoid the C trap. Treat them as independent statements. That is, statement 1, read the data, then you forget. Then statement 2, read the data, forget, and then check for both of them individually. Okay. So that is what you need to do to master the art of data sufficiency. Keeping these pointers in mind, if you practice more and more questions, you will gradually start getting better at it, and you will bring down the time. That sufficient time to actually answer a regular data sufficiency based question can be up to 50 seconds. You can bring it down to that level. 50 seconds is a very decent time for you to attempt a data sufficiency question. But if the data sufficiency question is based from a puzzle based arrangement or a sitting arrangement, you will have to partially arrange it. You can't just let go all of it. So in that case, it might slightly exceed a minute, but not more than that. I have seen students consuming, for a 50-second question, they end up taking 120, 100 seconds and more. And for a 1 minute question, which could have been done in 60, 65 seconds, 70 seconds max, they end up taking 150 seconds. So that is a lot of time. You're almost taking double the time. And I'm not saying this out of the blue. I have observed that. You can also check the last two tier 2 mocks which we have discussed on this platform only. You can see that all the data sufficiency questions, the topper timings mentioned there, were actually very high. And if the toppers, the cream of the students are actually consuming this much time, that means this needs to be hit right on the right spot. Otherwise it's going to create problems for you in the final examination, right? But this session is not only keeping in mind the tier 2 students, this is for all the students of SSC, because data sufficiency actually is a very important topic. I'll just summarize quickly what all we have done for this particular session. So analytical depth matters, right? Systematic approach is essential. So check one, then forget check two, forget check both. Ideally for this I would say please stick to your options. Your options should decide your course of action, that which statement you need to check first, which you need to check first, next, and how you need to identify and isolate. Foundation is the key. Of course, your key skills, your core concepts need to be completely revised and completely understood. Your basics need to be clear so that you can analyze that how much data is minimum required for you to solve this particular question. So your action plan, that means how you'll work on it: adopt the stop rule, master the distinction, that is differentiate between value questions and yes no questions, and practice systematically. So keeping all these pointers in mind, you can definitely ace this topic, data sufficiency, and you can get better at it. This was just a brief question, a brief session for you which I had brought here so that I could explain that what exactly is the problem statement, and the primary problem issue I think everybody has understood now by the end of this session. It is the concept of whether to solve it or not. That issue, that problem statement is causing the biggest issue for a lot of students, and to address that also I've told you, you need to consciously be aware of the fact that you don't have to proceed from a threshold to actually solve the question. You only need to stop at the point, use the stop action plan, stop at a particular point, and then answer your data sufficiency question and move ahead. If you regularly practice with this awareness, this will start being registered in your subconscious, and you'll get better at it, and you'll start taking lesser amount of time. Push yourself for that and you'll definitely ace it. Thank you so much for joining live, guys. I'll see you tomorrow with a detailed, in-depth, good question session for data sufficiency. Questions from previous year examinations, from various examinations, to give you a better exposure, and questions not only from the reasoning section but also from quant based data sufficiency, which is a major problematic issue for a lot of students. Thank you so much for joining live, guys. I'll see you in the next session tomorrow. You hit the like button right away, share this video with your peers, with everybody who's preparing, this is going to help them for sure, and subscribe the Oliveboard platform right away for this informative and wonderful content. Bye bye, namaskar, Jai Hind.